Okay. Okay, that was funny. Okay, so now we're taking a look at how do we actually use this framework. So if you're listening online, you will be actually on the link that's posted where you look at the GRI guidelines. And if you're in class, you're just looking at a little handout I gave you. And really the first 3 things you have to do are bulleted here. You have to read the reporting principles and the standard disclosures. And then you need to read the definition of key terms. This is just status quo for anything new you're going into. Like, I need the building blocks of what I'm talking about, right? It's a language, you need to learn the alphabet. If it's chemistry, you need to learn the table of, what's it called?
Periodic.
Periodic elements table. That one. Which is why I'm not a chemist. Then you need to choose core or comprehensive. And basically, honestly, what we're going to be working with is core, which is beginning. And then next is you need to get together your group and plan. And it's really important to realize, I've talked to a couple of companies about this. They're like, oh, we're going to start doing sustainability reporting. And I'm like, so what's your team? Who and how much time do they have allocated to it? How many resources do you have allocated to it? And they're like, oh, it's over in marketing. If they're pushing a sustainability report to marketing, what are they actually trying to do?
Greenwash.
They're just trying to make a glossy brochure that basically we would call greenwashing, right? They're going to print it with soy ink on recycled paper and be like, woo, look, we're green. Awesome. Okay. To be a real sustainability report, you need representatives and resources from every single department. Research and development, operations, sales, marketing, global impact, everything, right? So you've got to identify your team, kick off your meeting, and get your budget on it, resource allocation. Nobody wants to hear this, but if you're going to make one of these and do it with integrity and really track goals and set goals and establish baselines, you're going to have to come up with some money, because that takes time, and somebody's not doing the job they're paid 40 hours a week for because they're spending 10 hours a week on this. That's resource allocation, right? And then, okay, so in the middle here, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this one, planning how to define our material aspects. And there's so many words in here that I don't really, if you don't know what they are, you wouldn't. But really, a material aspect is what we were talking about, the integrated reporting on Wednesday, which is what are the things that are relevant to my business? So at the University of Montana, obviously, we've looked at the greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to look at our waste. We're going to look at our materials. We're going to look at our toxins. We're going to look at commuter miles. But there's a whole slew of things when you get into this that we don't have to look at all, like packaging. Packaging isn't relevant to the University of Montana, but we've got 2 million square feet of buildings that we heat and light and cool, so that's pretty relevant. If I'm an internet company, I don't have a building, so that's not relevant at all. So a material aspect is I'm measuring this thing because as I set goals and understand the results, it's going to be valuable to my business to go down the road along that path. These other things are completely irrelevant. And we've talked about stakeholders, and for the benefit of you that are online and to re-engage the people that are here, we're just going to kind of go through and see if we can, without looking at our notes, remember who the stakeholder groups are, because really once you have a committee, the next thing you need to do is get your stakeholders all together. So what's one stakeholder group I want represented?
The vendors.
The vendors. How am I going to identify which vendors? Yeah, see, this is where it gets tricky. It's really lovely to throw off this laundry list. We need to get all these people in the same room. So I'm Ford Motor Company. I think I talked about this example last week. One of my vendors is Firestone Rubber. And I'm in Michigan and they're in Kentucky. I don't know where they are. I'm just looking that up. Are they going to be interested in giving up, say, a week of their time to fly up and be part of sustainability reporting meetings for me?
If it means that you're going to lose, or they're going to lose your business.
It might be. Great answer. So one of the students responded, it might be important to them. If you're one of their key customers, then they better be interested. But you have to design your instrument to get their feedback in a way that's accessible to everybody. In other words, some people are going to do it online. Some people are going to want to do face-to-face. Some people are going to want to zoom in on a meeting or video conference or whatever. So it's this whole plan on how you engage your stakeholders. And then do I just have my big vendors, or do I maybe have some really small vendors too? Right? So you got to have that whole conversation just around vendors. What's another group, Shaw, of people that I want to engage in this process?
Community?
I want to get somebody from the community involved. Who might I bring in from the community? Who cares? I mean, who's vested with responsibility for communities? The mayor, city council, county council, public service utilities commission, right? The key players that care about the health of a community. Chamber of Commerce, United Way, okay? Who else, Lisa? What kinds of groups am I bringing to the table when I'm doing the stakeholder engagement?
Oh, like large conglomerates of investors?
Yep, I'm bringing together my investors, and it might be anything from my banker who lent me $100,000 is an investor, right? Or I might be publicly traded, right? So I'm Apple, and my majority shareholder is the New York State Employee Retirement System. So I want a rep from that investment committee as one of my stakeholders. Ty, who else do I care about bringing to the table? What was the answer you gave before?
Oh, a government entity.
Yeah, the government, right? I might want to have some regulators at the table. What kinds of concerns do you have? We just learned at the wastewater treatment plant a month ago that they're ratcheting back the molecular level that we can disperse waste into the watershed at, right? That's a government regulation. If I'm somebody that uses the watershed for my effluent, I'm going to be pretty interested in having a regulator at the table, right? Candy, who else?
Employees.
Your employees. And in a bigger company, that's going to be probably somebody from your union if you have one, some sort of labor representation. In a smaller company, you would just ask random employees from different parts of your organization. Have we hit them all?
Consumers.
Oh, consumers. Oh, easy out. Yeah, consumers are the last major group, and you want representatives from both large, people that are generate a large amount of your revenue, all the way down to your smaller customers. So just think about that in and of itself when I'm just telling you. These are the group of people you want to engage with before you even identify your material aspects. So that process alone can take, just making this up, but 6 months. So dry definition, stakeholders are defined as entities or individuals that can reasonably be expected to be significantly affected by the organization's activities, products, and services. Okay, and we just listed a whole ton of examples. So you identify them, you prioritize them, and you've got to figure out a way to engage with them, and that's going to take up a wide variety of platforms. Okay, then we need to look at our reporting principles. We're still basically on step 1. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these because if anything, I'll put you to sleep quicker. I don't know what it is, but reporting principles are just, for any report in the whole world, what makes them valid, right? So if somebody just gives you something that's called a report that's essentially greenwashing or marketing material, can you unpack that? So the kinds of things you're looking for is balance. Do they report, things they do well and things they don't do well? Is it comparable? Just what Ty was talking about earlier. If I have a chemical company and you're an apparel company, can we compare our reports? Clarity. I think we all know when we're reading bullshit. Collaboration comes from an innovative team effort. It's like, Okay, I understand all the words in the sentence, but it means nothing, okay? A good sustainability report is not written in, high-level vocabulary. It's straightforward, it's easy to read, it's easy to understand, and it's easy to ask questions based on. Obviously, it has to be accurate. Obviously, it has to be timely, i.e. pertain to a pretty recent time period. And lastly, reliability, which is, can somebody else come in and authenticate it? Okay? And in accounting world, that's called auditing. And in the sustainability reporting world, it's got another term that escapes me right now, but it's essentially an audit. Okay, and this is really where your eyes glaze over. So let's just go back to our little sheet that we were looking at, numbers 3 and 4. So again, the core of this is we're going to be disclosing, i.e. reporting on, general standard disclosures. And in number 4, we're going to be reporting on specific standard disclosures. Now, how do we interpret that based on this table? You can see there's 2 columns, well there's 4 columns, that there's core or comprehensive. And again, core is like the beginner report, and that's what we're going to be doing. So when we go to our manual, you can look up, these numbers are all identified one by one by one by one, and they tell you what it is. And we'll look at that in a second, but just that's how the numbers are set up, right? G4 for generation 4, and then just on and on. And you can see down the left-hand column the kinds of things they want you to talk about. What's your sustainability strategy? What does your organization look like? Who are your stakeholders? What's your governance policies? Do you have an ethics board? So these are the kinds of things you're reporting under your standard disclosures. These are also just best practices when reporting financial statements too, because this gives you an overview of the company. Okay, so you got that. Then that next set, in number 4 on our little piece of paper, specific standard disclosures. This is where you get into, I have identified the material aspects that are important to my company. I'm UPS, it's pretty important to report how many miles a year, millions of miles a year I drive, because that's directly connected with my greenhouse gas emissions. So that's, so greenhouse gas emissions is going to be one of my material aspects, and then one of my indicators is probably going to be miles driven, because I'm a transportation company. But if I'm if I'm an oil extraction company, I'm not probably looking at miles driven, I'm looking at barrels of oil harvested, right? And then how am I going to measure it? So let's just stop here for a second, and let's now go into the actual G4 disclosures link. And it's right here, okay. So this is from the Global Reporting Initiative. This is our references, and we're going to be looking at page 20 for the standard disclosures and page 48 for the specific standard disclosures. So I'm going to go into here, and this is like a 90-page document about what we're going to be using for our purposes, because we're barely kind of getting into this, is we're going to be looking at how to identify standard disclosures and specific disclosures. So let's go to page 20. And remember all that G41, G42, G43, okay? So here they basically are. This is just all a chart, but let's just get, so strategy and analysis. G41, everybody has to do that, whether they're core or comprehensive. You need to provide a statement from the most senior decision maker of the organization, such as the CEO, about the relevance of sustainability to the organization and the organization's strategy for achieving sustainability. So what that says is this is a required part of the general standard disclosures if you're doing core, because we looked at that matrix, right? It said everybody has to do G41. So can I just write a sentence? No, you have to identify all these things. So obviously, somebody senior in your organization is going to need to spend a pretty concerted amount of time identifying the key achievements and failures during the private year, et cetera, et cetera. So when we go into our UPS report, one of the things I'm going to ask you to look for is, hey, can you find this? Did it do all these things? Or does it just look like a bunch of gloss over? Right? And I can't offer you any real like rules how you're going to see that, but I feel like most of us have a feel when we're being talked blah, blah, blah to versus really understand somebody really trying to present a full picture of the strategy and analysis. Are you sort of with me? Okay, let's go back to the table and look at the second general standard disclosure, and then we'll come back here and see if we can find it. So now we're going to go back to our table. Okay, so the next area is what? Organizational profile. And how many things do they want me to report here? G3 through G16, whatever that is, 13 things, right? Okay, good, great. What do they all want here? Well, let's go see. G3. Okay, this is pretty easy. What's the name of your company? What are your brands and products and services? Where are you located? What countries are you in? What kind of company are you, like a corporation or a partnership, et cetera, et cetera. Total number of employees. This is what? This is just a huge overview of the company. Okay? So I'm going to ask you, can you pick up, Apple's report and find all this stuff? Is it there? Is it easy to find? Is it easy to discern? Okay, let's go do one more from the generals, and then we'll go to the set called specific standard disclosures, because those are the ones you choose with your stakeholders. These they just tell you got to do. So let's go back and take a look at one more. Okay, and again, being mindful that it's different between if you're reporting core or comprehensive. Right? So for comprehensive, you had to do 4.1 and 4.2. Core, you only had to do 4.1. Okay, let's go governance. What's governance again? What do I want to know if I know? But if I'm interested in the governance policies in your company, what am I asking? That's kind of a tough one. I don't even know that I have a succinct definition. What's governance in general? And don't use the word governance.
It's kind of like the set of standards that your business model for your particular company runs.
It's how things are run. It's how things are run. The governance model for the University of Montana is we have a board of regents in Helena. They appoint the presidents of the universities. The presidents choose their executive team. That's our governance model. How do we make sure that president of the university isn't corrupt? There's an internal ethics committee that reports directly to the board of regents. So if I have a complaint about him that I thought he was doing business with somebody on behalf of the university and benefiting himself, sound familiar? I would go to the internal ethics committee and they would go to the board of regents. That's governance. How do you make sure that things aren't corrupt within your organization? So let's go see. If I'm just doing a core report, I've only got to do G4-34. If I'm doing a comprehensive, I've obviously got a laundry list of them to do. So let's go look at what G34, what do you think we're going to see? How do you think they're going to figure out what the governance looks like? Any ideas?
Look at the chain of command.
Yeah, let's see. What happens if somebody does have a complaint about management? Did I miss? Oh, there we go. Governance. Report the governance structure of the organization, including the committees of the highest governance body. For UM, that's the Board of Regents. Identify any committees responsible for decision making on economic, environmental, and social impacts. Pretty straightforward. A lot of companies are going to be like, we don't have any internal committees that look at this stuff. And if you're new to sustainability reporting, a lot of this might just be like a wake-up call, like, oh, gosh, we don't have solid governance because we've never designed committees specifically oriented towards looking at these things. So it's also a developmental tool. So you're not looking as excited as I was hoping you would be. Okay, so I know. Reports are they're just boring, and people spend so much time and so much money writing them, and everyone's like, oh, that's great, where do I file it, right? In case I need it again someday. But I really hope that you can see that there is the possibility that this is also used for a tool to prod a company down the right path and give them ideas about how they can, how they can really assess how well they're doing. Okay, now let's look at this. So that was all the generals, right? Ethics, governance, organization, blah, blah, blah. Now we're on to the specifics. And this is where it gets very interesting, because this is different to every company based upon what your stakeholders told you was interesting. They're called the material aspects. And under each of your material aspects are indicators. So you have to learn those words. Aspects are up here, indicators are like a subset. And it says right here, you have to choose at least one indicator related to each identified material aspect. What are we talking about? I'm going to scroll all the way down here and tell you that we have 6 big categories with aspects within each of them. This is where it gets super exciting. So, economic aspects. My shareholders, and you've got to have at least one aspect of each of the big categories, and then under each of these aspects is a slew of indicators that you may or may not choose to report on. Economic performance, that's just basic financial statement stuff. Market presence, what does that mean? If you have market presence, what do you have? Does the source have market presence in Missoula? What?
Because everything was Missoula.
Yeah, but where are they located? Smack dab in the middle of that whole new, what we call city center, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've got a pretty huge market presence. They're built up around an apartment complex, so they've got 500 people that basically can walk out their front door into their gym, right? So market presence is identifying how do I sit in my market, whether it's a little tiny town or internationally. Okay, you can read all these. Environmental aspects. And this should read just like a laundry list of what we studied. Materials, energy, water, emissions, effluents and waste, transportation, supply chain. Is there a grievance mechanism? If somebody's, if a community wants to grieve that, that I'm dumping chlorine off the side of my train while I travel through their river ship, how do they do that? Okay, social. There's going to be a couple different areas we look at for social. So it really unpacks the social indicators. One is human rights. This is about pretty much the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, things around child labor, indigenous rights, freedom of association is a fancy term for forming a union, forced labor. So this is really, and this isn't a little company in Missoula, this is, the GAP. How do they deal with these human rights issues? Other social areas, labor practices and decent work, right? Do you have diverse, do you have men, women, ethnic groups, disabled, vets, LGBTQ? Are they represented in all areas of your business, or just diversity at the lower levels and the upper team is all, middle class white guys kind of thing? So you can read these kinds of different things. And then the last two in social is on about local communities and then your products and what kind of impact your products have from a toxic standpoint, from a, have there been liability lawsuits around them, things like that. So just so that you understand this whole infrastructure now. Maybe I'm just gonna put this on the board really quick, because it's kind of common, this is how I think. But so far, we've learned that you need to identify this whole set of, or that they identify for you this whole set of general standard disclosures. Right? That was the ethics, the governance, the organization, all that. Okay? And you don't have any leeway there. We looked at that on the chart. They told you exactly what you had to do. Then over here, you've got your specific standard disclosures. How did you identify which of those you wanted to report on? Or do you have a choice? Is it just a laundry list like the other ones? You have to choose.
Our stakeholders.
Yeah, your stakeholders will guide you there. And obviously, if I'm a labor rep, I'm going to be very much more interested in certain ones of these things than if I'm, in charge of your watershed. So these have 6 big categories that we just looked at, right? Do you remember what some of the ones were from the prior slide? What's the first one, just like financial statements called? Economic. Okay, and then the second one, which is basically what the whole class has been about. Environmental, yeah. Enviro. And then we have 4, the last 4 are all social, aren't they? Human rights. And then you can read off of here, labor relations. What's that next one called? Society and products. Right? Then under each of these are all those aspects. Multiple aspects. And then under each aspect are a series of indicators. Holy crap. Now do you see why companies don't do this? It's really a lot going on. And then the first question you're going to ask me, if I'm telling you, you need to do all this, it's going to be amazing, it's like, why are we doing this again? Because again, all of you are going to now not work 10 hours a week at the job you do, because you're part of a team doing this. So I need to be able to sell you as to why this is going to create value in your company. How am I going to do that? I'm going to go back to the last unit and go through that business case for sustainability, right? 6 bulleted list. Okay, now let's try 5 minutes. Now we're going to go back. Okay, this is super important, then we're going to go back to the link. So these things, these indicators, I introduced this last week. Anybody remember what that stands for, KPIs? Key performance indicators. Here's something else I want you to look for in these reports. Spitting out a ton of data does nobody any good. Remember when we looked at the greenhouse gas emissions, it was like, the University of Montana emitted 47,000 tons of carbon. And I'm like, is that good or not good? And one of you is like, well, that's good. The other one's like, sounds like a lot. Do you know at all if 47,000 tons is good or not good? I mean, it doesn't sound like it's very good. But what if I told you, a like-kind university of our same size and climate emitted 80,000 tons?
How much was that?
47. So then we're good. Or somebody emits 2, then we're not good. So that my point is when you read these reports and look for these indicators, you need to look for these things, and this you absolutely have to know. You have to look for trends. My emissions are going up. My emissions are leveling off. My emissions are going down. What does that mean, protocols used? What's a protocol? It's a rule you have to follow. And when we measured our greenhouse gases at the University of Montana, we used the greenhouse gas protocol, right? So you've got to tell, you've got to be transparent. We use this methodology to report. This is huge, the third one, presentation. Raw data is almost never relevant unless you're a scientist talking to another scientist. If I started spewing out, bacterial levels in water, would that mean anything to anybody in here? It wouldn't to me either. But when he was talking about things like where our pipeline of effluent goes into the Clark Fork shed, it's cleaner than upstream. Like, oh my God, my mind can process that even though I don't know anything about chemistry, right? So you need to be showing ratios, percentages, telling stories like he did, versus just spewing out raw data. It's really important that you look for that in the reports. The last time I was concerned with.
That's the KPN aspect of it.
One more time.
Key performance narrative.
Oh.
It's supposed to go along with
Did
it.
you read that?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard that term. Perfect. Yeah. A new term, KPN, Key Performance Narrative. Tell me the story, exactly. So I'm going to give you in literally 2 minutes what I want you to do for Wednesday, recognizing that you probably are still going to have absolutely no clue how to do it, but we'll just bulldog through it. Here's what I'd like you to try and do for Wednesday. Did you look at the assignment?
Is this what I use, yes?
Yes, it is for UPS. Okay, so everybody knows where this link is, correct? On Moodle, the actual GRI G4 Part 1 link. Okay. And then also on Moodle is where am I? Is the UPS sustainability report. Right here. And you can see it's a 77 or 74 page report. So now you know where the report is, now you know, and then you've got your little handout here with the standards and the generals that take you to the pages on the link in Moodle. Now I'm going to give you the actual assignment. Is somewhere, right? Is it a document? Oh, there it is. I put this together like a while ago. So I would like you to try. Let me turn off the recording. So thank you for listening.